Welcome. And who are you?
I'm Mark North.
Since I asked everyone, do you have a middle name?
I do have a middle name, and it's one that you'd never guess. It's an English name, St. John, and it's spelled like Saint John.
St. John. Wow. Okay. I feel like there's a story there with that name, but you don't have to share. Just
There probably is a story, but I actually don't know it, and that's
Okay.
actually something I should ask my dad.
okay. All right. Just saying because it's Mark St. John North. Okay. All right. Yeah. I think you have won the award for most unique middle name. Of everyone who's been on the thing. Either way, you rode this morning.
I did not write
You
this
did not
morning.
rode this riding. Okay. All right. So tell me how you got into cycling. So I'll start with that.
I got into cycling a little bit in high school, just ad hoc, riding around the block. And then that kind of got shelved when I went to college. And then at some point in college, when I realized I wasn't getting any exercise at all, I actually joined, like, they had a little gym. This is the early 80s, but a little gym at the school. And I remember there was a guy, and it was free weights, and there was a guy that would come in, and he had a pink road bike, and he would come in and he would do squats. And I was thinking, that guy must be really good to get away with riding a pink road bike in South Carolina in the early 80s. And I think he really was good. I mean, that's, near Greenville, South Carolina, near
Okay.
like where Hincapie and all those guys are, in the sort of foothills of I guess that's the lower Blue Ridge, maybe? I don't know. But anyway, so after I graduated, I started running, and at some point I decided I wanted to ride again. So I bought a bike. I bought a Bianchi.
Okay.
And I actually did a couple of duathlons, which at the time they were still called biathlons,
Okay.
because they didn't realize that conflicted with the skiing shooting sport.
Oh, okay.
So at some point later, they changed the name those to
Duathlons.
duathlons.
Didn't know that. Okay.
And I remember doing one, and I remember running in my cycling kit, which probably wasn't a really good idea, and not really knowing what I was doing. And then when I moved to Richmond, I started riding more regularly.
Okay.
Again, so at this point, it's sort of the later 80s.
Okay. So okay, just to make sure. So you started with you were running, and then you decided get a bike and try some duathlons.
Right.
Okay. Did you like those? Like, how did you?
I only did a couple,
Okay.
and I think I decided I didn't really like the running. I didn't like running when it's hot.
Okay.
So I kind of shelved the running,
Okay.
and then just stuck with the cycling.
Okay. Okay.
And then when I moved to Richmond, I sort of found some people to ride with. I initially lived on the south side, but then when I moved to the Fan, then I met more people that rode, and like there was some sort of ad hoc kind of racing. There was a place out east called Eastgate, industrial park, off of Lumburnum. And I remember we would ride out there. We'd have our helmets hanging off our handlebars on the way there, and then we'd put the helmets on, and we would do this little training race, and then we would ride home with the helmets hanging off the handlebars.
I'm guessing Eastgate's that's no more. Is it? That's
I think it's still it's
The
just an
location's
industrial.
there.
It's just an industrial park, a four corner,
okay.
and it had a train track that crossed it.
Okay.
Which occasionally.
So
was
was
an
this
issue.
like an official like?
No, it was like a
just-
pickup.
Okay,
It was
just
a
came out and
pickup
show.
thing.
Okay.
You show up and raced, and there was no prizes, and I don't even really know exactly who organized it.
Okay.
I don't know if you know the name Rick Bevel.
I've not heard this name.
Okay,
Before,
so
yeah.
he was like a big. He was in RABA. He was a big racer. I know he won like the state road race a couple of times. So it was always seemed like, and I was never that good. I mean, don't get me wrong here, but I was a participant. But it was always seemed like it was him versus a bunch of other people. They
Okay.
always tried to sort of, because he was very good at like not taking a pull. So and he was a good
It's a
sprinter.
skill.
So everybody was always trying to get away because he if it came down to a sprint, he could win. So I that's sort of what I remember from that.
Okay. All right. So you've moved to Richmond. You meet some people to ride, particularly when you get to the downtown fan area, right?
Right.
Did you join Rabo? Or you
Actually, I don't know if I ever did, but I probably should. But I never. I mean, I did some Rabo rides here and there, but just kind of freewheeling it basically.
Okay, all right. So you, how do you even meet people who ride? Like, you moved to a new area. Did you already know people in Richmond that rode some when you moved here, or did you like?
No, I think it's like I think there was some weird, when I was on the south side, there was some weird little shop that was off of Jank Road, and went there, and then like you meet people through like the shop. I mean, I think that's like when I've been traveling, like definitely pre internet days. It's like you go to a shop and ask what the group rides are, and of course everybody's kind of looking you up and down and like, okay, well, you know, are you legit? Can you hang on a group ride of whatever pace it is? I mean, you know, whether it's a 15 mile an hour or a 25 mile an hour group, people are always kind of like, oh, this guy, can he, you know, is he going to hang on, or is he going to be squirrely or whatever?
Did you find that you were able to hang on when you were riding with whoever these folks were?
I mean, I think that's the thing. When you start riding, you kind of gravitate to people of your similar ability. So, you know, I found people that I rode with, and then, you know, they know people and you ride with those, and then those group rides. Okay. I mean, back in those days, this is really going to date me. So there was a Saturday morning ride that left from underneath the Huguenot Bridge. That was the Saturday morning ride.
Like, wait, just the under Huguenot Bridge, like where Riverside?
Pony Pasture
area. Okay.
Yeah, there's like a little parking. I mean, pretty much everybody rode there, but that's where we
meet there.
Go out. Pretty much the classic. You go out Cherokee Road. You go Old Gun. Then we went 7-Eleven, and this is so long ago. 7-Eleven was a curvy road. James River High School was not there, and basically once you got past Salisbury, it was farmland. There was nothing.
Right.
Now it's subdivision after subdivision. So once you got past Salisbury, there really wasn't much traffic.
Okay.
So there was you go out there, you take a left on Huguenot Springs. There's a little hill towards the end of Huguenot Springs, and then so there'd be a sprint point there. Regroup, cross over Midlothian, and you'd end up on Genito. And there was always, you could take a left on Genito and do the short route, come back, or you could take a right on Genito and do a longer loop, which came back in on 7-Eleven in Winterfield. And this is before they've relocated Winterfield. That's not quite so long ago.
Okay.
But that was the Saturday morning ride that I did for quite a while.
Okay. And you connect some guys and you all go. And so there were sprints, there's riding fast. We're going to go back a little bit because I've started asking. Did you immediately, when you got this duathlons, did you immediately get yourself a cycling kit? Do you recall?
I don't really recall. I just have this recollection of doing that duathlon and doing the running in like cycling shorts. This was back when they didn't have like triathlon bike shorts, so they were like the big heavy bike shorts in a jersey. Okay. And it, you know, especially the jersey wasn't a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I thought to ask people about, you know, when do they transition into cycling kit, kind of thing. But you're in Richmond. You've met some folks. You're riding around. You found some people to kind of ride with. Are you doing events, or are you just kind of riding around town at this point? This is late 80s.
Yeah. Mainly just riding around. At some point, somebody's like, "Oh, you should race," and they were going to a race in Charlotte. And they thought it'd be a good idea. I mean, that I should. So I got a license, U.S. Cycling Federation license. At the time, I was a Cat 4. They had no Cat 5s then.
Right.
And it was the Dilworth criterium, and I lasted about half a lap before I was like OTB.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like this was a little prior to some of these other rides, so this was it was definitely, I hadn't been doing that many group rides when I did this.
Okay.
So I had no idea of the speed that these guys were going to go at, you know. So it was definitely an eye opener. So I mean, but I stuck with it, and I traveled some with my company and whatever. I went to Holland for a couple of years, and and when I was there, I did a few little bike races. But basically, the whole of the '90s and the '00s, I was just a very mediocre Cat 3. You know, I mean, I don't know, whenever Bryant Park started, I did those for a while as a B, and finally managed to work myself up to the A race, and then I finally managed to like finish the A race.
Okay.
And then once I could finish the A race with the main group, which was a pretty big accomplishment for myself.
Yeah.
I always seemed to manage to like be up to finish it, which was always like, that was kind of the goal. In a few years, I got some preems here and there, but that was about it. So it's like I spent a lot of time at Bryant Park with pretty minimal return on my investment.
Two guys, when you went to that first race, had you even seen a bike race prior to that? Other than like that, the pickup, I guess the pickup race.
Well, the pickup race was later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this was even before the pickup race. So
had you even seen a bike race in person before that?
No, not in person. Yeah,
okay.
So I had no idea. I mean, and even like the Cat 4 race at that time, that was, I guess those were the Le Mans years. So I mean, it was cycling, road cycling was kind of booming, and so like a Cat 4 race, you know, I mean, it was a crit, but there was still like 80 to 100 people in it. So it's like, you know, and if you don't line up near the front, even if you had more speed than I did,
right, you're still trapped.
You're in a bad shape if you don't line up in the first couple of rows. And I didn't line up in the first few rows, and I wasn't fast, so it was, you know, it was
not set up
it was
for
ugly.
Success.
Yeah, it was basically, I rode around for a few laps sort of by myself, and then got embarrassed and pulled out.
Okay.
Or maybe they pulled me, I can't remember.
I've talked to a few other people who said like they just showed up for a race and just did the race, which I highly advise everyone to watch a bike race before doing your first bike race if you're listening. So that's the bike race, and you're doing Bryant Park. Did you train for Bryant Park, or were you just like just riding on your own, putting your own kind of rides with people? Did you ever like try to do anything structured to prepare yourself for Bryant Park in those early years?
Not really. I mean, I thought I was quote unquote training, but I didn't really have a plan.
Okay.
I mean, I remember there were some years where it seemed like I rode a lot on the weekends, but didn't really ride much during the week. And then there was some of the opposite where I was doing things regularly on the weekdays, but not on the weekends. So it was kind of like, I hadn't really put it all together. I didn't really have really have a weekly plan, never mind like, you know, like an annual training plan.
Okay. So just your regular riding was keeping you in shape or prepared for that.
Right.
Okay. I also asked about your bike progression because the Bianchi was a duathlons.
Right. But I mean, it was just a road bike. I mean, it was like, I don't know if they even had time trial bikes for the masses back then. So,
How long did you keep that Bianchi? Roughly, kind of. Or how soon before you upgraded?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think when I moved to Richmond, two-wheel travel was still in Carytown, and I bought a Pinarello.
Okay.
So that was my first real like racing bike.
Okay.
So that was early, I guess, early 90s. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was like red. It was a really I mean, everybody always says, "Oh, I should never have sold it," but it was the same color scheme. Alexi Grayall had won something, and there was a poster, and it was the same
frame.
Same frame. Yeah, it was a very cool frame. And then Pinarello seemed like they dropped off the radar forever until like Sky came around, and then all
Okay.
of a sudden Pinarellos became cool again.
Is there anybody local who even sells Pinarellos? Is there?
Not
you
that
know,
I'm aware of.
I don't think so. Yeah, I was not even going to run through those brands. Yeah, I've seen people in Pinarellos, but I didn't know of any shops, none locally, but I couldn't think of any that actually sold Pinarellos. What are you on now? What's your road bike now?
So I have a
That you
Focus.
ride the most? Okay.
Yeah, so I have a Focus road bike that I got through Outpost when Outpost opened, which is like 6 years ago now. And I'm actually contemplating getting a new road bike. Not that there's anything wrong with that one. Focus doesn't distribute anymore in the U.S.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
they're still. I mean, it's a world tour. I mean, they support a world tour team. They have, like I don't know if you noticed, certain bikes. There's like a little sticker that says UCI. It means that they're
Right, they're
whatever.
legal, UCI legal.
So, yeah, but I mean, they still make bikes. They just don't distribute in the U.S. currently.
Okay.
But the bike I ride the most is a Factor,
Mm-hmm.
which is it's their race gravel bike, which is their LS. So I find so the two things I do the most are gravel rides / races, and then like long distance, more like randonneuring type
Okay.
events or brevets.
Okay, wait, okay. What is randonneuring?
So randonneuring, well, a friend of mine calls it's timed sightseeing. So there's an organization, of course, that puts on official events, and generally they're 200, 300, 400, 600, and 1,200 kilometer events, and
Okay.
you have a time that you have to do them. In the pre-COVID, pretty much up to COVID, like you always have and I could have brought one. You have a brevet card,
Okay.
and so you sign it at the beginning, and it lists control points,
Okay.
and at those control points, which basically is all of the furthest places. Basically, it's to show that you did the entire route and you didn't cut the route. So
Okay.
this is all predates electronics.
Tracking, okay. Sure.
Right. So this was how you demonstrate that you did the route. But all those control points there's a time. So there's an opening time and a closing time, and it's based on speed from the start.
Okay.
So the first control point, if it's 50 kilometers out, maybe it opens in 2 hours and it closes in 4 hours. And then as they go progressively further, the opening time, the difference gets wider and wider.
For the opening time, so, okay.
Right, to the closing time. And then, so for 200, I mean, it's I think it's 12 and a half hours
Okay.
you have. But at 300, it's 1.5 times that. And where it gets sticky is once you get beyond 400, like you go to a 600, the time you get 50% again more time. But if you want to sleep, the time doesn't stop.
Okay.
So so 400s are typically done. Roughly, you do a 400K one day and a 200 the next day, and the amount of sleep you get depends on how late you get in on the first day and how early you need to get up on the second day.
I have to look this up because I work in miles. 400K in miles would be 248 miles.
Right.
I got it. Okay, so those are the really big events. How does that start? How does that go from you're riding around with people, you're doing the Bryant Park races to some degree?
Well, that started in 2018. So this is we jump ahead.
Yeah,
we
that's
jump
fine.
ahead
That's
a lot.
absolutely fine.
So in 2018, I did my first big gravel race. I did Dirty Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
And then in that fall, my friend Tim said, "Hey, this is 400K," and I sometime after that, and he said, "Do you want to do it?" And I was like, "Sure." So it started in Northern Virginia, and it did a big loop west of Charlottesville, and then back up to, I think it started and finished in Warrington.
Okay.
And so we did it. It was really hot. I remember it being super hot. We stopped somewhere and had ice cream, and which probably wasn't the best idea. And at some point, we stopped for dinner because we knew we would, we started at 6 a.m. and I think we finished at 2. So we stopped for dinner, and we stopped at some Italian place and ate way too much because then we get going and we just bloated. So anyway, so we're doing this 400K, and I'm talking to him because he had lived in San Francisco for a while and had done these brevets with the San Francisco randonneurs. And he's like, yeah, he says, I wanted to do this 400K because I want to do this ride in Paris next year, Paris Brest Paris, which I had never heard of.
Okay.
So this is 2018. I'd never heard of Paris Brest Paris, but it's every 4 years, and it was on the next year, 2019.
Okay.
So what he explained is the way that the timing starts is if you've done a Grand Randonneur, which is 1,000 kilometers or more, you can sign up on a certain date. Okay. Then if you've done a 600, there's you start a week later you can sign up, and then if you've done a 400, then you can sign up, and then to a 200. And I think that year they actually opened it up. You didn't have to have done at some point if you wanted to sign up.
Okay.
And when you signed up, you got your time, your starting time.
Okay.
So he and I, and then he had this friend from San Francisco. We were going to do the PBP the next year.
Yeah.
So we all got the same time.
Okay.
Same time slot. So what happens then is in the following year, the year of the actual event, you have to do a series of a 2, 3, 4, and 6 documented rides to punch your ticket. Okay. So you have to do those by the ride is in August, but you have to do those to I think sometime towards the end of May. And once you've done those, then you can officially register for the event. Okay. So the first thing is it's just sort of registering, and then there's the qualifying.
So in the same year of the event, you have to do those: a 200, a 300, a 400, and a 600.
Right.
But do those have to be official randonneur events?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's I think it's ACP. So again, you have to have the card. The event has to be an official event with an approved route, and then you have to submit your brevet card, and then they have to approve it, make sure that you hit the controls within the time, and you did the full route within the time.
Okay.
So because they don't want people showing up
that haven't qualified,
that can't,
or they can't do it,
don't have a good probability of success.
Okay.
Right? Okay. And so it's, a 200, by that point, a 200 is not that big of a deal. A 300 is a long day. Yeah. A 400 is a very long day, and then a 600 is a very long weekend. I mean, that's kind of how I look at it. Yeah. I mean, once you get to a 400, you're going to be riding at night. Mm-hmm. A 300 in Richmond, you can do a 300 in the summer in the daylight. Once you get to a 400, you're basically going to be riding in the dark. Okay. And most of these start early, they start at sometime between 4 and 6. So
super.
Often you're riding in the dark to begin with. Okay. Which is, I don't like getting up early, but it's kind of when the sun's coming up and I've already got 25 or 50 miles in. It's kind of cool. Yeah. You do the roll call rides.
Right. It is nice to have the ride early in the morning. Yeah. So you're prepping for the Paris Brest Paris?
Yes.
Okay. And so you do your 200, your 300, 400, 600 events. Where'd you end up doing those?
So we did the 2, 3, and 4. Basically, we did them. Tim and I did them all in Surrey. Okay. So they were all progressively bigger loops. Okay. And they were and it was pretty flat. We really had no issues. And actually, we'd done the 2 and the 3. And I'll go, because we actually did the 600 first. So I'll get back to that in a minute. But we did the 200 and 300, and then we were the 400 was 2 more weeks. Because they generally set them up in order. So every other week, so you can kind of build up. But the 400, one or both of us couldn't make it, and we're trying to figure out what other 400. Mm-hmm. And it was officially 2 weeks after the 300, and then we were talking with the organizer, and he goes, "Oh, well, you can do a pre-ride." and we're like, well, what's that? And he goes, well, you can ride it next Saturday, a week before, and then you do a report, and you get credit for the ride, and you basically do a report, and like, you know, if there's a bridge out, or like the place that the 7-Eleven isn't open from, you know, it closes at 11 and you're going to get there after 11, so you know, so you just make, or the road on this thing is in bad shape, so you do it pre-ride, mainly with the understanding that if there's anything amiss with the route,
you let the organizers know.
You let them know. So we ended up doing it like a week later. We did the 400.
Okay.
But we actually did the 600 in February.
Okay.
And it was kind of like, because I still really didn't know. I'd only done the 400. That was the only official ride I had done at that point. And I was still a little on the fence, you know, about whether I could do it, whether I wanted to do it. I was a little worried about the sleep deprivation. And then, so we were like, oh, well, this is 600 down, started near Lumberton, North Carolina.
Okay.
And so Tim and I and Brantley did it, because this was the year Brantley was training for his Trans-America thing. So the three of us go down there, and for whatever reason, we couldn't get away until late. We didn't get down there till like after 10, and then we got checked in and got some food, and it was like almost midnight, and that route started at 4. And we get up, and we get our, you know, they always have a bike check, because you have to have, like, for the parts that are at night, you have to have like a reflective vest, you have to have reflective ankle straps, and you have to have a working front and rear light, and they check those things. I mean, it's pretty perfunctory, but you have to have them.
Yeah.
So we get up, we get the bike check, and it's 4:00 in the morning, and it's about 40 degrees and raining.
Oh, that didn't sound good.
Yeah, it wasn't, and we were like, and so I think I had rain pants, and I had shoes, and I had some like winterish gloves. Anyway, we take off, and I just got, the gloves I had weren't waterproof.
Okay.
And it was raining. So my gloves got soaked, and my hands got cold, and I was just miserable. So the first control, it was like a little convenience store, but there was like a Hardee's across the street. So we go into the Hardee's, like I got like the jumbo coffee and like French fries or something. I just wanted something hot. But I was like contemplating, like, okay, this is not for me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm miserable.
Yeah.
But I had some other gloves, some like thinner gloves, but they were neoprene. And by the time I had the coffee, I'm like, well, I mean, whatever, I'll keep going. And, you know, gradually it warmed up, and the day got, it warmed up, it quit raining.
Yeah.
And it was pretty windy, but it was pretty much, it's weird. I mean, there were probably 20 people at the beginning, but everybody kind of rides in their own little group. So pretty much all day it was just Brantley and Tim and I. And I didn't have Aero bars at the time. Brantley had Aero bars on, and Brantley was very fit at the time. So it was basically Brantley pulling Tim and I along. Probably a couple of times, a little faster than we really wanted to be going.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we got to, so there was a hotel. So it was kind of like out to this hotel, and then you still had like another, like 100-mile leg.
Yeah.
And then you came back to that hotel, and then it was like the next day there was like 200K left.
Okay.
So we were getting to the hotel just before dark. So, and Tim and I were both kind of like, we were like, ugh. But we get to the hotel, you know, they have a drop bag, so we have like dry clothes.
Okay.
We all took a shower, put it, there was, again, one of the, you always end up eating McDonald's for whatever reason, because it's like, what's available, what's quick. So we ended up, we go and eat, we shower, we go eat, put on dry kit, and then we do another 100 before we go to bed. 100 miles. But it was just that ability to like take a shower, put on some dry stuff, have some food, sit down for a minute, and then we basically felt felt fine.
Okay.
And so that was somewhere, I don't know what town we were in, but then we basically went up to like Emerald Isle and back. And I remember when we got to the far end, there was a brewery there. So we all had like a little a little 4-ounce pour, and then rode back. And then we got back at 2-ish, I think, and then we figured we could leave like at 8 in the morning. So we had, like 6 hours sleep.
Okay.
And the next day, the weather was okay, but there was pretty much a headwind the whole way.
Really? Okay.
So we were pretty tired, but I think the cutoff time was like 8 o'clock or something like that. But then at a certain point, we realized we didn't have our reflective stuff.
Okay.
So if we didn't get in before dark, then theoretically we could have been like DQ'd.
So
we were stressing more than we would have,
right,
because we didn't have the stuff with us.
Did you get in before dark?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. But we were like, oh, we can't screw around. Like we thought we were thinking, oh, we have to like 8:30, and this was like February, so it gets dark at like
super
6
early,
or 6:30, and we're like, oh, well, yeah, we
don't have that. You don't have that extra time.
Yeah.
And so the total distance, that was a 400.
That was a 600.
It was a 600K.
Yeah.
Okay. Which you had done before the 2, the 3, and the 4. Okay.
Yeah, because it at some point in the past you had to do the series in the correct order, but then they changed it, and you just had to do all 4 rides, so you didn't have to do them in order. But then we went back and did the 2, 3, 4 in the. Okay. And it was really like. I think it just worked out timing wise. I mean, obviously in February the weather's not the best, but it was really like, for me in particular, like I wanted to do it to see if I wanted to do the whole thing. And I mean, once we got through that, I mean, we knew we could do a 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Because we'd done a 4, and
Yeah. Prior year. What's the speed roughly for that? Like, what's the speed you all were traveling, roughly, kind of thing?
I mean, I think on that one, because we had Brantley, I mean, we were going like 17 something. Okay. But most of ours are like 15 to 16, depending on the elevation. I know though the 300 we had favorable winds, and I had my Aero bars, and we did the 300 in right at like 10 hours moving. Okay. So we were like 18.6. Okay. But that one seemed to be an anomaly that was a lot quicker. Okay. Is that a case of you all like aiming for 18 and like maintaining that, or like just you started in 24 and then like it just diminished to like 18? No, that one was like at some point in the ride I realized that we were on that pace, and I just kind of like that was in my head that I kind of wanted to do it. But it's one of these arbitrary things you just like. Okay. You just have in your mind. Like if you're just going out the Cap Trail and you look and I'm at 16.7 average, and you're like, oh, I wonder if I can get that up to 17 before I get to the end, or Okay. I just didn't know if there was we've got X number of hours, which means we need to do it at this pace, rest. Like if there was some kind of thought of like, okay, we should travel at this pace, let's maintain this pace, kind of thing to do. No, because all those it's the one off. So it's like you can, if you ride harder, it's like there's no real repercussions. I mean, if you go too hard early in the day, there's some repercussions. Yeah. But it's like it's not like you've then got another day, So you can. But I think Tim had a goal. Tim always looks more at elapsed time. I always look at rolling time. Okay. But the time you have for 200, I think, is 12 and a half. Okay. So he wanted to do the 300 in the time we had for so he had kind of this 12 and a half elapsed time, and I had kind of this 10-hour rolling time, and we managed to do both of those. I mean, the elapsed time is, a lot of that's a function of, how often you stop and how long you stop. Right. And, yeah. When you start looking at it, time goes. Right. It starts adding up those little breaks. So all of these are, clearly I'm sure you're enjoying these, or at least tolerating these, but these are to prepare for, or to qualify actually for the Paris Brest Paris. Correct. Which is supposed to be in 2019. Right. So you do these 4 events, colossal events by all measure, and then it's time for eventually Paris Brest Paris. Like how does that roll? So, yeah, so, I mean, it all seems a blur now, and it's 3 years ago. So, I mean, we had registered, and it's one of those, like, so many events now are so, like, expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like $60. You
Oh,
know?
really?
I mean, it was like, I mean, it's a volunteer thing, and it's, you know, the French do it, and this is the way it is, and it was like 60 euros.
Really?
And you could get
Wow.
a jersey, and the jersey was like 40 euros.
Wow,
You know,
okay.
it was very, you know, I mean, all the money is like getting there and staying and all that, but the
Sure,
event
yeah.
itself was very, like,
Yeah.
you know, it's not like, I mean, like I did triathlon, you do an Ironman these days, it's like $800.
Yeah.
You know, for a
Mhm.
1-day event. This is a 4-day event, and it's like $60.
Okay.
I mean, the food, like all the controls is food. You got to pay for the food, but I
Sure.
mean, but that is what it is.
Yeah.
So Tim had actually arranged. So he was making it a family vacation. His wife and 2 kids were going, and his stepmother was going. So he found like an Airbnb house that was supposedly, it was close to Rambouillet, which is the start town.
Okay.
Which is on the outskirts of, but it's a little further than you think
Okay.
from Paris. So my wife and I flew over. He and his family flew over. We stayed in Paris for a couple of days, and then on the Friday, I guess he had the house Friday to Friday. So Friday because of course the bike's in a big box.
Yeah.
So we were in a hotel in Paris. We both got to the airport similar times, but we had to wait for like the right taxi, like the kind that was the van.
Oh,
so
right.
we
They could take your
the-
right to take a big bike.
So we have a hotel. They have a luggage room, and we both were like, okay, we're going to come back to this hotel, so we could keep our bike box at the hotel.
Okay.
And then so he and I were just going to ride to the house, and
Mhm.
then the rest of the family took a Uber or
It was some kind of
something.
transportation back. Okay.
So we rode out there, and so this is Friday. Then Saturday, this is the check-in for the event. So you go, there's a bike inspection.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they make sure you have your lights. They kind of make sure nothing's rattling.
Sure.
And then you pick up your card, which is the big thing. They give you and like in the $60 entry fee, you get a vest. A reflective vest.
Okay.
So you don't have to wear their reflective vests, but they're cool, so might as well wear that.
Yeah.
And most people were. So once you get through bike check, you go and you get your packet essentially, like any event. But going from the house to Rambouillet, we both had Garmin's and we had the route loaded, but we didn't have the base maps. So the Garmin was pretty much
right.
like it was
You have to
not
get
very functional. So we rode there and rode back. Both times we got a little bit lost. And it was raining again, so like we're standing in line for bike check in the rain.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we leave, Tim has a flat. I ended up riding back because they had like a bike shop had a thing. So I rode back, bought a new tire for him,
And then rode back to him.
and rode back to where he was. I mean, it's just like a mile away. We had just
Okay,
left, and he had this unfixable flat. And then on the way back, like there was a turn and there was some gravel, and he slides and goes down and bumps his knee, and I had a flat, and it was just like, oh my God. So this is the day before.
Right, yeah.
But anyway, we finally made it back to the house. We got everything organized. So we start the next day. So
Yeah.
our start time is 8:15 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's weird. Yes, it's very weird. So that was like, because we didn't have long qualifying rides. So having done a 400, like the earliest ones start like at 4.
Okay.
And it's like every 15 minutes, there's like 200 people go.
Okay.
I mean, this is a big event. There's like 8,000 people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So what makes it especially weird is like all the other events were done domestically. There had been no more than like 20 people.
Yeah.
And this, like every 15 minutes, there's 200 people. So like literally when you're riding for 4 days, you're almost never not seeing
Other riders.
other riders.
That's good.
I mean, it's super cool, and I mean, the roads were immaculate. The people were cool. So all this, there's the control stops. At the control stops, they have water. They have mainly like cafeteria kind of food.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them they have places you can sleep, which is basically like a gym with like not even mattresses, just like
floor
on the floor.
Yeah.
But all those controls you don't realize, like you park your bike, you walk in, you get your thing stamped. They all have pretty cool stamps, kind of like a postage thing, and they write your time down. But then you go get something to eat, and it's like, I mean, even if you're just trying to top up supplies, it's 20, 30 minutes. You know, it's not like, where there's the three of us, we walk into 7-Eleven and come back out, and it's 5 minutes and you're on your way. It's like 20 minutes plus, and you can easily, like, the longer it goes into the thing, the more tired you get, and the longer everything takes, and you forget what you're doing. Yeah. You only have one thing to do, but you forget what that one thing is.
Yeah. So, wait, okay. So those are rest stops. Do either of you speak French? Like what?
Tim did a little bit, but generally it wasn't a problem. I mean, more people spoke. Of the riders, the predominant language was English.
Okay.
I mean, there's people there from like literally all over the world.
Okay.
There's people from South America, a lot of Asians, a lot of people from Malaysia, from India, Pakistan, Japan, like, and
from everywhere.
Every country you can think of in Europe.
Okay. So I was wondering about the level of communication going on there. So the rest stops, not super quick. You're getting stuff, and then you're back on rolling again.
So our biggest thing, and I'm not sure we ever really. So in most brevets, like everybody leaves at like 6 a.m. So they say, okay, the first control's 100 kilometers. It's open from A to B, from this, from 11 to 3.
Sure.
So, but this was a rolling start. So people were starting as early as 4, and actually then they had there's another cohort that started Monday morning, but they had a shorter time. Our time limit was 90 hours. The people starting Monday morning had an 84-hour time limit. Okay. So, and if you start in that limit and you finish in 85 hours, you're not an official finisher. I mean, they probably still give you the medal, but you're not an official finisher. You're not in the book. There's a book. So if you finish in the time, you're what they call
you're in the
ancien.
Okay.
So anyway, so we wanted to do it. We thought 90 hours. That's pretty. It's a pretty liberal time. We we can get some sleep. Best laid plans. But we were never really clear, what the opening and closing times were, because they just gave you this, they were open for 24 hours. And we were like, well, because especially at the beginning, when you haven't banked time by going quickly, to sleep. So we were always a little concerned about whether we were within the time limits
for the different
at the beginning.
Okay.
Because we got going. Tim had a flat early, and he had continentals, and it was just such a it was really hard to get the tire changed. Yeah. I mean, it was really, really difficult. So we were stopped for 45 minutes.
Was it tube or tubeless?
Well, he was going to run tubeless, but he couldn't find sealant anywhere.
Okay.
So he was running them too, but I don't know whether they were the tubeless ones or not. But it's we didn't know all the tricks to getting the tires on. They're known to be very difficult. Yeah. And it was just it was already dark at this point. I mean, we only had about an hour of riding before it got dark. Yeah. Because we started so late.
Yeah, right.
So we were a little behind the gun there, and then we missed a turn. So it's right off the bat, we were a little. I mean, we all felt fine, but we just already got this feeling of being behind the 8 ball, so to speak.
So wait. Okay, you're doing this event in Paris. Your Garmin's, your bike computers, they don't have the local maps loaded, or do you have them by now?
No, we do not. Okay. But literally, they have every turn for 760 miles as a
Is
sign.
a different sign? Okay.
As a sign, but we just happened to miss one. I mean, so I think when we came back, when we missed the turn, we came back. We realized there was a guy. It had been a guy standing there, like in front of the sign.
Oh, okay.
And what clued us in, and like later on, it would have been more apparent, but we didn't quite realize. Like all of a sudden, we're like, well, we don't see anybody.
Okay.
And it was like, that's just not normal.
Yeah.
Like you're always seeing people. So once you like don't see anybody for a while, you're like, oh, this is something's. And it really was. That was the one thing, the one time. Like other than that, I don't know that we had any issues at all from a directional point of view.
So you're rolling. You're rolling through this thing. How long does it take you to actually complete?
So we did it in, I think it was like 87 hours. So the last night, so it starts Sunday. So we finished on Thursday, like around 11. But we'd stop somewhere for the night, and we were just like, okay, how late can we start? And with a comfortable margin.
Okay.
So we weren't trying to we weren't trying to do it as fast as we could. We just wanted to do it. We just wanted to finish.
Complete.
And they actually have like a little club. Like if you finish within the last, I think it's even less than an hour. Like the last half hour, like there's a like some little award for that.
Okay.
I mean, there's like people supposedly like get back to Rambouillet and like go to the pub and have a beer. To, you know, so they just roll over the line with minutes to spare.
So you finish this thing, okay? What is the feeling after finishing this? Like, is this colossal on top of colossal?
Yeah, I mean, we were just mainly exhausted from in my case, like I wasn't as physically beat up as I thought I would be, but I was very sleep deprived. So I was just like exhausted, and from the sleep. I mean, my legs felt okay. I mean, it's like all those, like after, like doing all these long rides, after like, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours, like every time you stop, when you get going again, your legs feel like crap for like 10 minutes. And then they generally start feeling better.
Yeah.
So in this case, like after the first evening, it's like every time you got going, it was always like, oh, and then you kind of roll into it, and it was kind of a lumpy. It's kind of a lumpy route. It's kind of like riding around here.
Okay.
So I mean, I think riding around. There's one big climb into Brest.
Okay.
But, I mean, you go up and down into Brest, which is on the coast, and then when you come out of Brest, you got to go back up and down. So there's one big climb that you do in each direction.
You go both times. Okay.
But other than that, it's like kind of like Goochland. I mean, it's like a lot of rollers.
Okay.
And like we were used to it. I think there's a lot of people that from parts of the world where it was flat.
Yeah.
And they weren't used to that. And you have a bike that like we had all our stuff. Like there was like a drop, but we didn't use that. So we had all our stuff.
Okay.
So we had change of kit, and we had spares and batteries and battery chargers, and so your bike's another 15 pounds heavier than it would normally be. So you have to lug up every hill and down every.
Okay, so all right. Questions with this. How many times did you go to sleep between the
4? I think it was 4 times.
4 times you guys went to sleep, and like 5 or 6 hours of sleep, or even less.
Less.
Okay.
Yeah, like 3, 4. And actually, Tim had actually booked a hotel for that Monday afternoon. For Monday, but because of this whole thing about time, like we got to this hotel, and we basically had like 3 hours sleep.
Okay.
I mean, so like we got there, it was light. We left, it was still light. I mean, they still could book the room again for the evening.
Right. Yeah.
But we weren't even there long enough. I mean, we're barely there long enough to justify it. But then after that, we were just staying at the controls.
The control points. Okay. And I guess other riders were doing this, and they would sleep in the control.
Yeah, and so like in some cases they'd be full. Like we didn't necessarily run into that, but there was like people like there's like there's a, and so you'd go into these controls, and a lot of them are like schools, right? And there's people like under the tables sleeping.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people outside like in the grass, just like wrapped up in a foil blanket. and along the route too. I mean,
Yeah.
like, and we saw some like the first night, and we're like, okay, these people like 3 hours in, those people like
They're
sleeping.
taking it
You're
already.
Like, they're gonna
not-
get behind the 8 ball if they're
Yeah.
already sleeping.
Yeah. That doesn't sound like the best time to take.
But it's like, but you're in the it. Like when Brantley did his. I mean, you're one of one. Like there's nobody around you.
Yeah.
But this is like you're just in with
it's endless to see.
all
There's
these
a lot
endless
of riders.
sea of
Okay.
other crazies.
Um,
And the locals were. I mean, you go by and people have a little picnic, like a little pop-up table, and they, free water and coffee and and I mean, people were very friendly. And you go through some of the towns where they. I mean, it wasn't a control per se, but they'd be having like a fair, and there'd be. Most of those you had to pay, but there'd be people set up like literally like right on the road selling coffee or pastries, and
that's great.
which was. I mean, people definitely seemed to be into it.
Okay. I feel like that would not be the case in the States.
Yeah, I mean, the roads were all. I mean, the roads were immaculate.
Yeah.
Like you didn't really have to worry about potholes. You didn't
Yeah.
have to worry about. I mean, almost no trash. And there was like one busy road sort of on the way into Brest, which I think there's probably no alternative where there was like not quite a highway, but more like that,
Okay.
a little bit in and then back out. But other than that, it was like just road, like riding in Hanover with very little traffic. It was, and you felt like what traffic there was very. They knew this was going on. They probably could not know. So it felt very safe.
So you finished 87 hours. Was there a placement? Was there like it was just everyone just finished?
No, supposedly they do this. It's like the thing with brevets. It's like you finish or you don't finish.
Okay.
And you have to finish within the time.
Okay.
And then there's there's a lot of people that finish that they're not official because they were after the time, but because they do I won't be able to pronounce it yet, but there's another term for actually getting the fact that you have officially finished it. Right?
Okay.
They send you a little timing thing that you can put on your medal.
Okay.
It gives you your official time and that you're officially
You're
in.
you're an official finisher there.
Yeah.
So you finish, sleep deprived. What's the first thing you go do when you finish this thing? Or you just immediately go to sleep? You eat
So
where
where it started and finished in Rambouillet, they had like this big tent. So and also with your entry, there was a pre-ride meal and a post-ride meal. So we had the post-ride meal. We wanted to they were out of beer, so we had cider. So we split like a big bottle of cider among the three of us. And then Tim and I had to ride home, and we got lost again. So like after all that, we had it wasn't far. I mean, it was like 12 miles, but it just seemed. And he had a slow leak. That's a whole nother story. But he had a slow leak, so we had to stop like 3 or 4 times for him to pump his tire up because he definitely didn't want to try to change it at that point.
Yeah.
So we get back to the house. So there was a pool there. We jumped in the pool. We had champagne with our wives. My wife cooked dinner. Nice. I think it had because we still got back to the hotel. I mean back to the house around 2. So I think I took a little nap, got up for dinner, stayed up for a little bit, went to bed, and then unfortunately we had to be out of the house by some like 10 or 11. So it's like I would have definitely whatever it was, I would have slept longer. And so then we went back to Paris. But Tim and I actually took the train. So we actually took our bikes on the train to go back to Paris, which was super, super easy.
Yeah. Okay. Would you do that again?
Well, we're planning on doing it next year.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we did a 1200 in June.
Okay.
So we could get a better starting spot.
How'd that 1200 go? How long did it take to finish?
So similar time. So this one was very different. So it was in Virginia. It was put on by DC Randonneuring, and it was basically set up as four rides. They had hotels each of the 3 nights. So you basically know, okay, you get up. I'm riding until I get to this
Yeah.
hotel, and then the sooner you get to that hotel, the more sleep you get.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you had a bag, a overnight bag, and they took the bag for you. And actually, they even had it in the room, which was nice. And they had food, so like you get there, there's food.
Okay.
So you can immediately start get a shower, eat, and they had a mechanic.
Okay.
And
Did your registration for this thing cover the cost of the hotel rooms?
so in this was like $500.
Okay.
But
all right.
but that included 3 nights of a hotel.
That's okay. That's pretty
And
good.
all that
and
food,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's
food
shared
and
hotel.
them transporting your stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So that's. I mean, it's still a bar. Nobody's making money on that. They're not.
Okay, yeah.
They're hopefully they break even.
Yeah.
But,
okay. So you do one in June, which I think I saw at least one of the legs on Strava.
So
somewhere.
they were. The longest was the first day. So this started in Leesburg, so a little further north. And we went and we finished in Stanton, but we went all the way down to where is it? The VMI Lexington.
Okay.
So we went all the way down to Lexington and then back up to Stanton.
Okay.
And yeah, so it actually, so we're driving up the night before,
Yeah.
and I realized I have a little pillowcase. I take vitamins every day, and ironically, I take a blood pressure pill.
Okay.
And I realized we're halfway to Leesburg, and I remember that I'd forgotten this thing. So I left a message for my doctor. I never heard back, because it's like, well, if it was one night, it would be no big deal. But I'm like, okay, it's going to be like 5 nights. So anyway, I ended up, I met my wife we go through Crozet. I don't know if you've ever done any of these rides with Grant, or even some of the roll call rides. They leave from like Crozet. There's a place, Mud Honey.
Not familiar. I've been in Crozet once for a ride on like the Parkway. No, on Skyline Drive. Is like all done. Yeah.
So luckily, anyway, so I called so I met her at the coffee shop, and she bought those, and I also realized I'd forgotten my knee warmers.
Okay.
So she bought those, and it turned out like in the day 3, those were definitely my knee warmers and my shoe covers, and it rained all day, day 3, so that was a godsend. They
came in handy.
But we were there. It was we got to Crozet around 1, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, we're here, and we had. I don't know if we had probably had about 100 miles in at that point, but like, another 20 miles we get to climb up Afton.
Okay. Yeah.
And then so we get to climb up Afton, go down the other side, and then go along the Valley Road.
Okay.
All the way up to Lexington.
Okay.
And this, I think, we pretty much had a headwind the whole way, but then once we got to Lexington, then we had a tailwind in the nighttime part. And the thing that always gets me is I'm always like super nervous about the nighttime part, mainly because of cars, but when you have a bright red light in the back, and especially if there's more than one of you, it's like motors seem to give you more room than they do in the day. I don't, maybe they're less likely to be on their phones, or I don't know what it is, but and most of the time there's way less traffic than I am worried about. Like we've done from Orange up to Warrenton, I guess 3 or 4 times now, and it's like after we leave,
I suppose in the
Orange,
night,
there's like no traffic.
I suppose in the night, we're generally, I would think, more looking for stuff to come out, like to jump on the road or what. I would think in the nighttime we might, as a driver, right, or probably more thinking about something's going to be out in the road, even with our headlights on, then maybe they are just like more attentive. I could be wrong.
I mean, I think the light, like
but
even just a red light is more like it's more visible than like whatever you're wearing during the daytime.
Right. It's I would imagine it stands out more than just the bright.
But that was like the first, but it was this was June. Yeah. And it's still like somewhere around 10 o'clock. It was cold, and you're doing these little rollers, and it's like you go into the little the dips at the bottom of the rollers, and it's chilly. And it was like I was a couple. The last hour, I was like more wanted to be done because I was cold and I was like super tired.
How are your you've got lights in the front and the back, right?
Right.
How are they? These are super long rides. Are you're running a dynamo?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, and they're doing both lights.
Yes.
Okay. What kind of dynamo are you using? Because I know I messaged you on Strava on that. Like, how's that working? Like, what kind of setup do you have?
So
there?
it's a Sun SON something. I looked it up after that.
Okay.
And then it's a Bosch something headlight.
Okay.
And the Bosch whatever makes the tail light as well. And the tail light, it doesn't flash. It's just on.
It's just on. Okay.
And actually, that's like it PvP. You'd get dequalified if you had a flashing light.
Right.
Front and rear have to be solid lights.
Because it's like against the lawn.
Yeah, I mean it's disconcerting. I mean, if you do group this past Saturday we did Outpost did a nocturnal 200K to Jamestown and back.
Yep.
Yeah, if you're in a group and as
right.
another cyclist, I mean you're in a group of cyclists and the people in front of you have flashing rear lights. It's really annoying / disorientating.
Right.
And
really
it actually rained some on Saturday, and that was like I ended up going at one point from Charles City to the bridge. I ended up going to the front mainly because I could see better at the front because it was raining and I didn't have like the flashing lights, and then the flashing lights aggravated by the rain.
Yeah. Okay.
And then if you have just one person in front of you, your field of vision is really reduced. Right. I mean, if you're all the way at the back, I found either at the front or the back. Like being second wheel is normally the best place to be, but at night, not so much.
Slight reduction. Okay.
But I think this the law in France anyway, but it's a DQ for the event. Yeah, okay. and if they come across you and you don't have a light, that's a DQ.
Gotta have a light.
And you gotta have your vest.
Okay. So you're running a dynamo. It's on in the front hub.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is kind of for my information. Is that dynamo? Did it come with the bike, or you bought that? You bought that wheel separate to go in there with the
wheel separate. Yeah. Okay. And Braden built the wheel.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I mean, it's a fairly like people that commute, people that do bike packing. Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty standard thing. Okay. And I had one for PvP. My friend Tim, in both cases, he just used like the light in motion. They make one of their ones is actually called the randonneuring light, and it lasts for a long time.
Okay.
But with the dyno, you don't have to worry about it. It's not like the batteries. Your legs are the battery.
Okay.
So I mean, it's 6 of one, half dozen the other. I mean, it's whatever. It's there's definitely. You ask the question, and then I look, and then somebody else put a link, and it tells you. So like when it's off, it's using 2 watts. When it's on, it can be using like 5 to 7 watts.
Oh, okay.
But if you're on those long rides and you're only averaging 140, I mean, it's it could be 5% of your wattage.
Okay. All right.
It's not nothing.
Right.
I mean, but whether it's So I mean, it's that versus like you have something you clip on your handlebars that
eventually runs out.
That could run out.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right, that's good to know. I don't have any plans for any like massively long rides through the night, but it's good to know there's an option.
But even if you and I normally don't ride that bike on the roll call rides, but if I'm gonna do it tomorrow, like I don't have to worry, did I charge my battery? Right. So if you just get up and want to ride, you don't have to did I charge it?
Right.
It's like,
the light is working. Okay.
Or like if you go to a friend's house and you ride your bike and it's like, all of a sudden it's dark. It's like, oh, I mean, if it's attached to your bike, it's always, it's so from a convenience point of view, I think in Europe now that they're like, well, some parts of Europe, it's required on a bike.
So you've done this massive ride. You do the 1200K this June, and you're planning on going back this year for the Paris?
It's Next year. Next
okay.
August. So yeah, a year from now.
Oh, right. Every 4 years.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Do you feel like what's the thought of like doing these massive rides? Like, why? As opposed to just like I'm just gonna show up and do my 20-mile ride with my friends. Like, why the massive rides?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Tim puts it as like it's sightseeing with a time limit, but I mean, his goal for next time is to do it better. Like we screwed around at the controls. We had this, the hotel that we spent more time like getting there and getting back than we did probably sleeping. There was like, we had some issues with flat. So it was like if we get rid of most of those errors or whatever, then we can get more sleep. I mean, we're not going to try to do it faster. I mean, there's people that are like, oh, I want to do it in 60 hours. Yeah. Or whatever. I mean, they do tell you like the
fastest times. Okay.
And it's like 50 some hours, or maybe less. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, I think our moving time was like less than 60.
Okay.
But it was like, you take that from 90 and you go, oh, there's 30 hours. You get, and like of that 30, we probably got like 12 hours sleep. It's like, there's a lot of opportunity there, even if you don't ride any faster, to get like more sleep. Okay. So the idea is you're either riding, eating, or sleeping.
That's an interesting kind of goals, like to do a ride so you can get more sleep in the ride.
Yeah.
Okay, so you like the sightseeing, the challenge of these things, or you just gives you something to do?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I mean, it's like, well, but when you have that, then it gives you like, okay, then now I've got to do a 2, 3, and 4, so and 6. So like, okay, which ones am I gonna do, and then be prepared for those. It's kind of like, you have this one goal, but then all of a sudden you've got all this subset of other goals, which I don't know. It's like it's finding the things that motivate you, and so like if you have this one big goal that motivates you, you can set all these other goals, and even if in and of themselves they're not. By themselves, maybe they wouldn't be that big of a goal, but they're a stepping stone to a bigger goal. Okay. I mean, I've always kind of done my mediocre racing, but it was always like, it's not as much that the racing was always kind of like my excuse to train. Okay. I mean, it's a different. I mean, there's plenty of people that ride a lot that never race, maybe even hardly even do events. Like official events or events you have to pay for, but it's like, so they're motivated, I don't know what their motivation is. Yeah. But like if you put these things on your calendar, then you're like, okay, now I need to go out and train
these other things before them. Yeah.
Because I've got this thing coming up.
So we'll back up a bit. So prior to, make sure I've got this right. 2018, you do Dirty Kansas, which is now Unbound, right?
Correct.
Okay. 2018 was the first time you did Dirty Kansas?
Yes.
Okay. 200 miles. Gravel. Had you done that distance prior to that?
No. So, well, yes, on pavement. Okay. So the start of my really long rides.
Yeah, that's what
I longer than 200K.
Sure.
So before Outpost, I don't think I'd done over like 110. So like I'd done cap to cap and then ridden there and back from the fan. Right. And so some 100-mile rides with a little nominal before or after. So in 2017, like I think Dirty Kansas kind of got on my radar. I was kind of I found out about it. It was intriguing to me, but I was kind of like, I mean, they have other distances, but it's like in my mind, if I was going to go to Kansas, I wanted to do the 200.
Sure.
So, I think, I don't know if it was that year or the previous year, a triathlete friend of mine, he always used to, at the end of the season, he would do these various things. So one year he did an Everesting in Tarrington. Okay. And then I think just prior to when Brantley did this, he wanted to do the Cap Trail 4 times in 24 hours, which he didn't. He pulled the plug after 3.
Okay.
3 times.
Okay.
But at some point in 2017, Brantley said something about, I want to get the record, the Strava for the cap-to-cap double.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, I'm in. And so we sent something out, and so some people were going to do the first 100 with us, and some other people were going to do the second 100 with us.
Yeah.
So anyway, we started whatever. So I've never, it was one of the few times I've ever driven to ship block.
Okay.
I'm like 3 miles away.
Yeah.
But I drove there so I could have my car with my cooler. And so we got started. We rode to Jamestown, came back, and on the way back I felt like hell. Somewhere around 4 Mile, it was just like, oh my God, I'm so tired. It's like 75 miles in.
Okay.
And we're gonna do 200. And then the worst thing is like you actually get to your car.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, now I gotta go away from my car. And we were there longer than, Brantley. He's always always takes longer. So we're sitting there, and I'm like, oh come on, we gotta go, because I'm like losing my mojo.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we get going again on the second loop, and I actually start feeling better as we start riding.
Okay.
So we're going, and actually this was the ride I first met Tim. I had never met Tim before. So he did he was actually going to do the whole thing, but he had a conflict. So he did a little bit of the first one, and then he rode the whole way there and back, and that was a godsend. He did. He pulled a good bit, and he's a chatty guy, which I've done, like every brevet I've done with Tim. I've never done one without him. But he's like, so it's like it makes the time go by. He's always got, there's always something interesting to talk about.
Sure.
So anyway, so we get going on the second leg, and it starts to get better and better. At some point, I was like, I don't know if I can do this, but then you kind of you work through that. And this, I have to say this because this is an interesting little tidbit. So there was this guy that was on the Outpost Club, Eric. It was on the ride, so he was on the second loop, and we get to, and Brantley and I had talked about it. It's kind of funny. We talked about it a couple of times about, because he was going to, I don't know if the Strava segment exists. It's one of those. It's not like the regular ones. It's like a hidden segment, which I don't know how. I've never made a Strava segment of any kind.
Okay.
So I don't know if it existed before this or not. But anyway, and he was like, "Oh yeah," we were both being nonchalant about it, right? So we get to the 7-Eleven.
Okay. Yep.
And we cross over, and we're on the little flat before the downhill. And I look up, and Eric's like, "Oh, I'm going to do a sprint," and so he's like 30 yards down the road. Yeah. And Tim turns to me and goes, "You're not going to let him get away with that, are you?" And I didn't even think twice. It was just kind of like, no, and I just went. Yeah. And so so a few seconds later, Brantley was like, "Oh shit." But anyway, Brantley didn't catch me, so Brantley still hasn't forgiven me 5 years later.
But this is in the middle of this thing, and you're
no, this is the end.
This is the end. Okay, this is the
okay.
This is the end. Okay.
So this is like, if it's going to be a segment, whoever got there first was going to get the segment. It's going to get the KOM, right?
Okay,
so that's what it's about.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Who did?
Oh, I did.
Okay.
Yeah. So because Eric went, and then I hadn't really planned on that, but then he went, and then Tim said that, and I just kind of chased after Eric, and I caught him and passed him, and wherever it was one of those where I'm not exactly sure where the end is. You know? It's like you get to mile 51.
Right.
And but that was like, okay, so this was like in my mind, okay, I can do
these long rides.
I can do a 200 mile.
Okay.
And so then so Dirty Cans, or even then, was like it was like a lottery. So I applied, Braden applied, and then these mountain bike guys, Dennis Dempsey and those guys, I don't know if Adam
I know the name Dennis Dempsey, yeah.
And Mike Lipka. So the three of them, they applied, and you can do it if you and I both want to do it, we can apply together, and we either both get in or neither of us. So if you doing it is contingent on me doing it, you can do it that way.
You can apply to it, okay.
So those three guys had applied, and I applied, and Braden applied. The only one that got in was Braden. But in those days, you you could swap entries.
Okay.
You can't do that anymore.
Okay.
But so at some point, Braden's like he wasn't going to go. Those other guys didn't get in, and I'm like, I was kind of on the fence, but then like okay, so the current mechanic at Outpost at the time, Kurt, like, well, if you want to go, I'll go with you.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, done. So
Okay.
this is like April, and the race is like the first weekend in June.
Okay.
But I've been riding, a lot, so it wasn't like, so anyway, so Kurt and I went, and then, and this is funny too. So once he said he was going, I was like, okay, and then I'm like, okay, I got to find somewhere to stay. So I started looking.
Yeah. So
the way Kansas is, it's like a town, and then like 50 miles in each direction, there's another town. So this is in Emporia. There's nothing. So like, there's no hotel within, like literally there's hotels that are 50 miles out. And so then I go on Airbnb, and I don't see anything. And then all of a sudden this thing pops up, and it's a sorority house.
Okay.
So I end up booking the sorority house.
Okay.
And so they hadn't done it before, but because this is like right after school gets out. And there had been a link to like Emporia State is there. There was like you could stay in the dorms, but that was already full too.
Okay.
But this thing popped up, and so anyway, so I booked it there, and it turned out it was like the best. It's like 2 blocks from the start.
Oh, nice.
It was like these women that had gone to Emporia State. There had been sorority girls, but they're whatever, middle aged now.
Yeah.
And they were doing this as a fundraiser. So they were just so like upbeat and helpful. I mean, it's a dorm room with linoleum floors and a crappy little bed, but it's like it's perfect. And like the race morning, they had breakfast at 4 a.m. Because they know the race is at 6. Yeah. They had a pasta dinner the night before, which wasn't very good, but it met the needs. And everywhere in town was totally slammed because it's a tiny town and you got all these people there. So it worked out that was good. Kurt was there. I mean, he's a mechanic, so he's not. A lot of times people just have like their friend or their spouse. So it's like, okay, if you need somebody to hand you some fig bars, that's great. But if you need like your bike fixed
or something like that,
it's a little more dicey. So anyway, the race, I'm trying to think because I did it. So it starts out, and so this year they had Jens Voigt. Have you heard of him? He used to be a pro, and then he was a commentator on
Sounds
NBC
familiar.
for a while. Okay.
Yeah.
So they had Jens Voigt, and then they had Sven Nys,
Okay.
who was a cyclocross star.
Okay.
That never really went into road racing, so it's more of a niche. But he's like probably one of the best ever cyclocross racers.
Okay.
So they're both Trek athletes, so they were both there.
Okay.
So when I went to line up, so I went fairly early, so Jens was right there.
Oh, yeah.
So I got my picture with Jens.
Okay.
So it was like before the thing had started, unlike like PBP where it was like, I got my picture with him, and then we got going, and I wasn't very aggressive. So it's like there's a mile, and then you turn on the gravel, and then you don't see like a mile on the road through town, then you turn on the gravel, and then you literally don't see pavement again till like the last mile.
Okay.
But we turn on the gravel, and I'm too far back really. But at some point early on, like Sven had stopped to pee or something, and he's going by, and I don't, most of these cyclocross. These gravel guys don't know who he is, but I killed myself and I got on his wheel and I rode on his wheel for like a mile. So that was like, okay, I haven't even got to the first checkpoint and I've got like, you know, like it's not a disaster.
Yeah.
So I get to the first checkpoint. I don't feel too bad, you know. I refuel. I had a Camelback thing, which I never use, but it's just like the distances are like you just can't have enough water because it's just 3 stops in 200 miles.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So the first one was like 60 miles.
Right. Yeah. Better have more.
And so then, and I've been mainly with groups, and I put like Braden had cobbled together some Aero bars for my gravel bike like 2 days before I left.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden I'm reading this stuff, and and the people that really know, and they're like, yeah, you really want Aero bars. And I'd done my little stint as triathlete and done some time trial. So I'd spent enough time in time trial on aero bars that I was comfortable.
Is the benefit there just because you're in an aero position for the whole thing, or is it some other additional benefits?
I think the biggest thing is it's comfort.
Okay.
Like if
additional
you're
comfort.
used to being in that position and the position is right, you're
Yeah.
taking all the pressure off your hands.
Yeah.
And your
Long
hands aren't
distance.
getting so beat up, and you can kind of like it's on your shoulders, not
Yeah.
like on your arms, like
Okay.
your triceps.
Yeah.
So, and there's the aero advantage.
Okay.
So I think for the long, and it's not a very like Kansas plays to my strengths, which means it's not super technical.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of sort of rolling hills, but it's not twisty.
Okay.
So you can just get in the aero bar and stay there.
Okay.
The gravel's pretty good, mostly.
But this is the bike that your drop handlebar gravel bike.
Right.
Okay.
It was a 9er RLT.
When you put the aero bars in there, did you change your saddle position or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
Well, in this case, absolutely not, because I only put them on like 2 days before I left.
Okay.
I literally he used parts from like 3 different aero bar setups to put this thing together.
And you found them decently comfortable.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I asked because I always figured that if you put aero bars on and you clear your different position than in your drops, that you would need to adjust the saddle to accommodate for the
well,
extra
you
lean.
can. I mean, and I've played around with this, and I still haven't come to a definitive what's the best saddle for that. Like, I'm not particularly picky about saddles, but like on a time trial bike, like the split saddle is definitely the thing. But like when you're on like a gravel bike, I don't necessarily. I don't think I want that kind of a saddle.
Okay.
So I still have a couple of different mainly road type saddles.
Okay.
But you're also a little higher up because you're having to put it above the bars, so you're not like super low like you would be if you were in a dedicated time trial bike.
Good point. Right, the bars are a little bit elevated over the plane of the handlebars. Okay.
So I mean, and that depends on the drop you have on your road bike relative to But,
Okay.
But yeah, in this particular case, there was no time or thought of any other adjustments.
No time to change.
Yeah.
So you do this 200 miles.
Right.
Gravel. How much more difficult was this compared to the 200 miles on the road?
That was the hardest thing I'd ever done.
Yeah.
To that point in time.
Okay.
So through the first checkpoint, like I was tired, but I felt good. First checkpoint to second checkpoint, I was still making good time. I was staying with some groups. I felt pretty good. Second checkpoint, so it's 200 miles, and the second checkpoint was pretty much the furthest south.
Okay.
And at that point, you turn north, and then you had a headwind.
Okay.
When I left checkpoint 2, I had a headwind, and for whatever reason, I just was by myself. So I was basically close to 60 miles. I was mostly by myself into a headwind. When I got to checkpoint 3, I was probably as spent then as I'd ever been ever.
Yeah.
And I still had 40 some miles to go. But I pull in, Kurt's there. I mean, and that's the other thing, they have you can get some neutral support, but when you pull in somewhere and you can see somebody it's really
yes,
comforting.
Relief, yeah.
Comforting. So, and he had a minivan, he had everything set up. He had a bike stand, so so each time he just threw the bike on the bikes. I didn't have any mechanicals, but just wipe the chain down, loop the chain, just check everything over.
Okay.
Had all this food set up so I could just stuff my pockets with stuff. But when I got in there, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna need a minute. I had to because there's this whole thing about I don't know. There's a lot of people there that do it as a ride. I'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah.
I have this thing about rides versus races.
Okay.
But anyway, so I'm still got this race mentality, and actually in Kurt goes, Jens just left. So I mean, this guy he's still 10 plus years younger than me.
Yeah.
And, ex-pro, but he's not probably training, but he's only 15 minutes in front of me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. So anyway, I kind of we gather myself, get going, and then I find a group.
Okay.
And it's like 6 guys and me, and they're all younger, and they're all like gung ho, you know. And it's like it's in those kind of events, it's weird because even though like short events, like the people that are stronger than you are like always up the road.
Yeah.
But there's enough people that have had like mishaps, flats, crashes. Sure. Maybe they just spent too long in the controls. So there's people sometimes coming by you that are like stronger, you know, like you want to be with them, right?
Sure.
So I'm in this group of like 6 guys, and I'm like the oldest by 20 years.
Yeah.
And they like, and I'm taking my pulls, but these guys are like taking these hero pulls.
Okay.
And we're still into this headwind. And so it just keeps going and keeps going, and then all of a sudden it's like me and one other guy. Like everybody else has dropped off.
Yeah.
And it's like I know I'm the weakest, but it's just like, you know, old man strength. So we finally get back. So I'm me and this one guy I've been riding with. So me and him for like the last 10 miles, and we get onto the pavement. And
okay.
So you get on the pavement. There's like one last little hill, not quite like Tredegar, but similar to Tredegar,
okay.
which is just like the little kick in the nuts.
Yeah, yeah.
Like a mile from the finish on the pavement.
Okay.
But right when we get onto, so we're before that little kicker, we get on the pavement. There's an old guy, like because you know it's all about age group.
Yeah.
Racing, right? And you can't tell. There's no difference in the numbers. You don't have different colors or.
Sure.
So it's like, I wonder if this guy's in my age group is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
You know, some other guy with gray hair. So anyway, so we get to him and so he kind of tacks on to us. When we hit that pitch, I'm like, okay, this is it.
Yeah.
So I gun it up this pitch, and then there's like less than a mile, like you go through Emporia State, and then you come down to this, the finish line, right?
Yeah.
So it's downtown Emporia.
Yeah.
And it's like half a mile, and it's, you know, they've got the barricades, and there's just a shitload of people.
Yeah.
I'm gonna yell. But anyway, so I just kept the gas on all the way to the finish. It turns out that guy was in my age group, and I got 7th
okay.
out of like 100 and some in my age group.
That's
and
awesome.
I was like so spent, but so like happy.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that is a huge accomplishment, you know, at whatever age you live in, right? So that is that's a huge accomplishment, man. How was the gravel? Was it like chunky gravel, little gravel? Like
most of it was pretty smooth. Most of it's like Loudoun County kind of gravel.
Okay.
But the sections that are bad are really bad. So,
okay.
Which is kind of like, so if it's bad, you kind of have to go slow.
Okay.
Or it's okay and you can just go at your speed.
Okay.
So it pretty much worked out for me that way. Like, and there was some of the downhills where like I definitely wasn't going. Like when I was in that group of guys, it was like a couple of times when they kind of lost me on the downhills, and then I had to like work my way back up to them because they would take the downhills faster. And at that point, I'm like, the last thing I want to do is like crash or
you don't want to wipe out
flat
that
or something. So like I mean, I didn't really in that race I had no clue where I was, like overall or
the
like,
placement,
or in my age group I had no idea, and I didn't really like I had no real expectations.
Okay.
Like I'm just racing to do the best I can do.
Yeah.
So I really didn't know where I was. I mean, like it was a while after I finished before I kind of, you know, and then it was like, oh, well, because they have like a 5-place podium and I was 7th, so it's kind of like, oh, so that kind of like, oh, I want to try this again.
Yeah, which is still awesome. I mean, that was not like 7 of 7 people. That was like right. 7 of like what 70, 80 people, something like that.
Yeah. I think that year because I was like in the 55, which was like one of the most people.
Yeah.
You know, like for some reason, some of these endurance things, like the 50 to 59 is like that's.
There's
most
some.
People.
It was a while ago, but I heard about there's some like ultra running events, and that usually when it's the men, it's the much older guys are the ones who end up winning or getting the best times for these ultra running events for some reason. So. Who knows?
Well, I mean, there's definitely, I mean, you know, even in the pro things, I mean, I don't know, there's some prodigies out there, but I mean, the later in the career, still not. I mean, you know, I mean, there's Alejandro Valverde, who's 42, that's racing in the Vuelta. He's still in the top 20, at 42. But I mean, it always used to be that like your peak age for the Grand Tours was sort of closer to 35.
Yeah.
Of course, like Pogačar and Evenepoel are kind of throwing that up in there. But,
so you do Dirty Kanza, 2018, I believe is our year here.
Yeah, 2018.
Place 7th in your age group. You finish this thing. Do you think, is the thought like, I wanna come back and do this again, or just like, okay,
no,
okay.
It was like, I want to come back and I want to get on the podium.
Okay.
So, and I got in 2019. I was in better shape. I knew more what to expect. The course was completely different. So it went completely different, because it went north from Emporia instead of south. So like none of the same roads at all.
But still all gravel.
All gravel. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I was much better prepared. But so there was a guy there that I knew that I'd raced with on some other gravel stuff.
Yeah.
So he and I was a bit more aggressive about lining up, and there was like a front pack.
Okay.
And an hour in, I'm still in the front pack, which is still like 150 people.
Yeah.
But it's like, it is the front. I mean, the EF guys are still there, like Taylor Finney, and those it's still that same pack.
Yeah.
And then I dropped my chain.
Oh, okay.
And so I pull over and I'm panicking and I yank on it and I twist the chain. So I end up having to take some links out.
Okay.
So I mean, so like I pull over. It's like literally I didn't see anybody for like 4 or 5 minutes, and then another big group came. I mean, we'd already separated.
Yeah.
And then it was like group after group after group. And so I took out a couple links. I didn't take out enough.
Yeah.
So my chain still had so like if I put pressure on it, it would skip.
Yeah.
So this is like 22 miles in, and the first stop is like at 60.
Okay.
So for 40 miles, I'm limping with this chain.
Bad chain. Okay.
And a couple of little uphills, I had to get off and walk because I couldn't put enough pressure. The chain would drop.
Okay.
So I get to the first rest stop.
Mm-hmm.
My buddy's there. We put a new chain on.
Yeah.
And then I go. But so I forgot what it was. So like there's 120 guys in my age group.
Yeah.
So I'm like 90th at this point after the first, and that's going into the first checkpoint. It didn't, because the timing mats before you go in.
Yeah.
So we probably took longer because we had to change the chain. And he wasn't a mechanic. It was a friend of mine.
Yeah.
It wasn't Kurt. So he's not a mechanic. I'm not a mechanic. So all this took a while.
Right. You figured it out.
So then I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to, so they have this, so it starts at 6:30. Sunset's like at 8:15 or 8:30. And so they have you get a patch. It's like, Beat the Sun Club.
Yeah.
Which is actually, that's my profile pic on Strava.
Okay.
So now you can see the relevance of that.
Okay.
So the first year when I was 7th, I beat the time, right? So I got that patch. So they have that patch until sunset at 8 something. Then they have the Midnight Club. So if you come in between them, then at midnight you get the Midnight Club patch. And then if you come in between midnight and 3 o'clock, which I think is the cutoff, you get the Breakfast Club patch.
Okay.
But prior to starting the event, getting another Beat the Sun Club was not I thought that was okay, that's no big deal. But now I'm like, okay, I'm way behind, both time wise and place wise.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna podium. I mean, that's
okay.
It's like I know that. All my real aspirations were out the window.
Okay.
But I'm like,
do your best.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like, if I hadn't been in Kansas and driven to Kansas and it would have been like, well, screw this. I'm going to take my bike and go home. But I'm like, I'm going to do the best I can do.
Yeah.
And I actually had a pretty decent race after that. And I ended up 12th.
Okay.
In my age group. So I was pleased with my race. But then there were no big groups to ride with. It was kind of like, what I had learned the first time, I kind of had applied for the first hour of the second race, but then I couldn't really, so So then I'm like, okay, I've got this. I still have this unmet
desire to go back.
Desire.
Yeah.
So the next year was COVID, and then in 21 I didn't get in.
Okay.
Like it's a lottery. I didn't get in. So then this year I got in again.
Mm-hmm.
And then my current mechanic at Outpost, Sam, said he'd go with me.
Okay. Awesome.
So and again, like all 3 times stayed in the same place.
Okay.
Same, because it's like kind of one of those like, okay, you're on the list if you want to go, tell us, and
we'll
you've got
keep
a road.
space for it. Sure.
So anyway, and then it went south again, so it was like the same route as the first time I'd done it. So
Okay.
they switched it up. So I got a good start, was in good groups, and it was just again, I kind of like always felt pretty comfortable. So one other point to make here is in both of those first 2 years, it was hot as balls.
Yeah.
And people were, I probably did as well as I did the second time because people were like people dropped out from like heat stroke, or they just got too hot and whatever. I don't know if it's like officially heat stroke, but basically they were cramping up, or effects of the heat. So this time it was cool.
Yeah.
So we get going. I get through the first. Each time it's a little different. So there was a neutral water stop at 40 miles.
Okay.
I knew nobody would stop, which nobody did. I mean, nobody that's racing it is going to stop. So I had my Camelback thing. I had 2 bottles. I was fine. So I go through the first, and so the first checkpoint's 80 miles. So I have stuff to get me 80 miles. So at some point after the first water stop, it starts raining.
Okay.
And it's cold rain, and it gets muddy. And so I'm in a group of 20, 25 guys on gravel, and if you're on the wheel, you're just getting sprayed.
Yeah, right, in
mud.
the face. Yeah.
I mean, it's not just like on the road where you're getting water. It's like it. So it's just trying to make the best of it, right? And then there was like one uphill pitch where it stopped raining, and then this uphill pitch, and it was kind of like peanut butter. Basically, you have to walk.
Right.
So get through all this, get to the 80-mile checkpoint, got my swapped out my Camelback thing, got water. I mean, I was in and out 2 minutes. Like both of the other 2 times, like I kind of like I took a few minutes, but this was like in and out. It was more like an F1 stop.
Yeah.
Nice. And got in, and as soon as I got out of the checkpoint, and I was like, man, I gotta pee. And there were 2 guys that had been in the group I was in. They were on the side. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So I pull over and managed to get it done and get on the road with them, because they were both, a couple of, again, it's like as an old guy, you're looking for a couple of younger guys that are like nice and strong.
Take that effort,
And so I get on with them, and again, we get going. There was some rain, there was some mud. We get to nothing too major. We get to so there's 2 checkpoints where there's people. So we get to the next checkpoint. So this is like 160 miles in, and I'm like, okay, I'm in good shape once again. Get in and out, and like my I forget what it was. My phone's dying, right? So Sam was keeping track of me with some app, right?
Okay.
And he could text me. So so that's the other thing. So the first checkpoint, I don't think he knew anything yet. So the second checkpoint, so this is 160 miles in, he goes, "You're in second." I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like I didn't really know. And I was like, well, how far is in front is first and how far back is third? He didn't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm like, holy shit. And then I was like, my phone's almost dying, and I'm like, oh, because I had like a little brick, just it's like the size of a small cigar, right?
Yeah.
And so like I'm running, and he's like plugging it into my phone and putting it into my back pocket so he can like text
Keep
me.
it charged, yeah.
And so anyway, so I get going, and like 5 miles after this is just this ungodly mud section. Like everybody's walking. I mean, it's just like peanut butter mud. You have to carry your bike, because if your bike is rolling, the mud is just caking up at the bottom bracket underneath and I'm like, oh my God. But then I'm like, okay, and it's hot. Like all of a sudden it got hot, like it had all this rain, and I literally was cold earlier. Now I'm like, it's in the sun. It's this mud is getting like, you know how it was soupy, but now it's just like getting hot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's getting sticky because it's hot and it's evaporating. And I'm like, oh my God. So I find, but I'm like, okay, everybody else has to do this too,
right.
So get through that, and then at the bottom is a creek, and it seems to be typical. They have like these creeks, and there's like a concrete bridge, but there's water like at least 6 or 8 inches over the top of the concrete, and the concrete's got like big divots at. Like if you try to ride through these things, like you maybe can go through them at full speed, and you maybe can hit something and like destroy your front wheel. But everybody stopped cleaning their bike, and they actually at check-in they gave everybody like these mini paint stirrers, like you use for like a pint of paint. They call them mud sticks.
Okay, so you can take the mud out.
Yeah, definitely came in handy. So I cleared as much mud, just as much as I thought I needed to get going, and get going again. And then but then at this point I'm not with anybody, so I'm going, and I'm like, feeling okay, as good as you feel after 10 and a half hours at this point.
Wait, what mile marker were you talking about?
So we're like at 165, 170.
Okay, all right.
And so I'm riding, and then this girl comes up to me, and she's really strong. So I end up riding with her for, I don't know, 5 or 10 miles. And she's run out of water, and she's looking for water. And there's some locals. So like occasionally there's like locals that are like have water or whatever. And they go, yeah, we have water. So she stops. I'm fine with water. So I go up a couple 100 yards to pee. Yeah. And then I'm like, right when I'm doing this, like these 3 guys go by, and I'm like, shit, like I want to jump onto that train. And then like I can hear her talking with the locals, right? Yeah. She's more like in the riding mode all of a sudden. Yeah. I'm like, ah. And then just as I'm getting on the bike to start slow pedaling, 2 other guys come by. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I gotta go. So I jump on with them, and they are just, they're both like in their early 20s, and they're just, I feel like I'm on the Sunday morning CBC ride, going out of Osborne. Yeah. I am just like on the rivet, staring at their free wheel. Yeah. But it was like, this is perfect. It's like an hour to go. I want to get it over with. Like, I think I'm second. Like, I don't want to end up like second and feel like I didn't do everything I could. Yeah. And if I'm better than that, then I don't want to give anybody else a chance to come up to me. Yeah. So I'm like, it was really pretty much the perfect scenario, because I'm going like as fast as I can go on somebody's wheel.
Right, someone else is taking the effort.
And so like the 2 of us, or those 2 guys and me, and I'm taking pulls. I'm not doing my fair share, but I'm taking pulls. So we catch up with the 3 guys that had passed me a little bit earlier while I was on the side of the road. And so then there's the 5 of us, and then, or 6 of us. And then all of a sudden, but one of those guys is just really, really strong. And at some point, it was just me and him. Yeah. And he turns to me and he goes, "Are you gonna help?" And I said, "Look, I'm 60. I said, I'll do what I can, but I'm just trying to hold your wheel for as long as I can." I was totally like, And then like, I don't know if he even asked me to pull after that. Yeah. And so like, I was on his wheel till like a few miles to go, and then I was like, at some point I just like popped. Yeah. And so then I get onto the pavement, and so it's the same pavement where like you're on the pavement, and then there's this one little climb. And this time it's earlier, because I think the winds were favorable. I had shorter stops, blah blah blah. So it was like there were a bunch of people out. Like the times before there hadn't been. There was like this whole little party going on this hill, and everybody's like heckling. Anyway, and I'm like, and there was somebody comes by me, and so the people heckling are like, "Oh, you got to get on his wheel. He's 150th. You'll be 151st." Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. And I'm like, anyway, I just go, and I finish, and it was like, yeah, I was totally exhausted. Probably not as exhausted as I was the first time. Yeah. The first time I was just like so spent. But don't get me wrong, I was spent.
It's still a lot. Yeah.
But and then Sam, I found out I won.
Yeah. First place.
It turns out the guy that had been leading all the way up to the second check, he finished 3rd. Okay. So I don't know what happened. And then the guy that was second to me, he was second to me like the whole way. Like, and he was always like right there, like 6 to 8 minutes, and I think at the end it was like 12 to 15, and I'm
Okay.
sure like that gap got pulled out because I was managed to get on those guys' wheels, and then the guy that was in the lead was like another 12 minutes. So I don't know whether he had bigger problems in the mud, maybe had some mechanicals or like, but they actually do the podiums like the next morning.
Okay.
Because
so many riders are probably coming in. Yeah.
And so, but the guy that had been first and ended up, he was like the only person that like wasn't happy. Like everybody else was all smiling, and he's like, I don't know. I guess he knew he was winning and was still
lost
annoyed that he did.
that place.
Yeah. But I mean, my goal was to podium, and I really didn't. And I thought that was realistic. I didn't really think I had an opportunity to win.
You did though.
I did.
Awesome, man. First place. In your first place.
So I aged up. So
yeah.
this was 60, and it's 60 plus. There's no more age groups.
Okay,
and,
okay, all right.
And but there were like 77 starters, so it wasn't. It wasn't like I beat 6 people.
Okay.
And the guy that was second, he was actually 65, and so I only rarely do it, but like sometimes before like event, you look at who's signed up.
Yeah,
and
who's
so like I had him penciled, and then like, oh, this guy's really good because he had been, I don't know if he'd won, but he had a really good time.
Okay.
And then I was like, oh well, he's 65, he'll be in the next age group, and then I was like, oh, actually he won't.
That's it.
Because it's just 60
It's 60
plus.
and 60
there's
now.
no
Okay.
more. But then so he and I now follow each other on Strava, and like, so he went to like the national, the Grand Fondo in Asheville. Like he won his age group.
Oh, the Grand Fondo in Asheville, yeah.
The national championship one.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, then he did Steamboat Gravel, and he did like really well at podium there. So it's like, okay, this guy's
strong competition.
Super legit.
Okay. But
so,
you secured that win, man. Are you gonna go back?
I don't know. No. When I came home, my wife says, "Congratulations," and then she said, "You're done now, right?"
I asked that question if you're gonna go back because not the same level of event. There's a ride called the Armed Forces Cycling Classic in Arlington, Virginia. It's in June, and it's this. It was one of the first events I'd ever found out about. But it's this like, so what is it, 9 laps? It's like they close down the roads in Arlington. You can do as many laps as you can in 3 hours.
Okay.
If you do 1 to 5 laps, you get a bronze medal. 6 to 8 is a silver, and then 9 or more is a gold medal. Medal, right? First event I'd ever heard about. And I set the goal of I'd like to do 9 laps, right? Because the speed's like 19 and a half for 3 hours without stops. And so I was like, yeah, I'd like to get the gold medal. Didn't get it my first year, didn't get it my second year, but I did this past whatever this year is, 2022. But then once I did, I was like, do I want to do this again? Like once you've gotten like the top place, like do I want to go back? So that's why I asked, like,
right.
Do you want to?
Well, see, like in your case, it's more like there's more in your control. Like when you like if you're looking for a time or number of laps, like
right.
Versus
competing against
people. I mean, I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's just like, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, like,
do you want to be the top
everything
performer?
went well. Like, my nutrition was fine. I didn't have any bike problems. I got in and out of the checkpoints cleanly. I got in good groups to draft with. And I had a good day physically. Yeah. And it's like any one of those things
could have been wrong.
Have been wrong. I mean, the amount of time I spent at the checkpoints either of the other 2 years I wouldn't have been in the top 3. By reducing my time in like the first time it was like 30 minutes total. Well, 30 minutes of stop time the first time I did it. This is out of like 14 hours. Okay. And and then this time it was like 15. I mean, 15 minutes would have put me 2 places back. So it's like all those things when you're really competing. Right. Like if you're just trying to finish the ride, it doesn't matter. Yeah. But if you're trying to
compete with others, yeah.
I mean, I always struggle with that because like another one I've done this Croatan,
yeah,
the buck 50.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that, yeah.
And again, it's like they have checkpoints, and it's like how you do the checkpoints is huge in how, like if you're in a group and you stop and the group doesn't stop, that's it. Like you're never going to see, probably not going to see that group again.
So it sounds like you're challenged by both doing the big rides, the big events, and competing against people in the big events. Being able to compete. Okay.
Trying to compete. Yeah.
Okay. And the plan is to just keep doing monster events because Paris Brest Paris is next year.
The Paris Brest Paris and those are like they're non-competitive. Right?
Okay.
So
all right.
the point of those is to complete them. Is completing versus competing. And
sure.
So I have this thing where like there's rides and there's races. Mm-hmm. Okay. And like even PvP is a ride, it's not a race. I mean, there is a time limit, but it's like I'm not necessarily trying to maximize my performance, like to do the best I can. I'm just trying to finish it within the parameters. And I mean, you can do things that are called a race and treat them like a ride. And there's things like, I mean, there's rides you go on that almost are like a race.
So if you sign up for a ride, you sign up for an event, let's call it this. Say you sign up for an event, and there is placement opportunity. Do you race it, or do you? Is that what's the determining factor? Of like I'm going to race this, as opposed to I'm just going to ride this. Like, is it they have placements, and then there is a first, second, fourth, fifth, and you're going to race that, or is it just?
Well,
humans are there.
I don't know. There's races where, there's ones where there's placements where I don't treat them like a race.
Okay.
For whatever reason.
Okay.
Like I did the Belgian waffle last year, and I treated it like a race until about I don't know an hour and a half in, and then I'm like, okay, it's not I'm not competitive. Like I'm not going downhill nearly fast. Like I'm not with the front guys.
Yeah.
I'm not going downhill as fast as other people are going. I'm going to still try to ride this as quickly as I can, but I'm not I wasn't really in race mode anymore. It went from a race to a ride.
Okay.
But one of the things I like about the brevets is their rides. I'm not I don't have to be stressed out about like a Croatan buck 50. Like I'm stressing out about getting through the filling up my water bottles or getting new water bottles.
Because that's just like that's just laps. So it's like a 50-mile lap?
Well, it was a 75-mile lap.
Okay.
So it's 150 miles. And well, the first time I did it, it was 3 50-mile laps. And then this time they changed it up and made the lap bigger. So it was 2
75s. Okay.
And it was actually a lot better because when it was 50-mile laps, they had a 50, 100, and 150, and they all used the exact same course. So so even if you're doing the 150, there's like all these guys that are doing either a third or 2/3 of what you're doing, and they're all mixed in, and it's where once they made the bigger lap, once you went past a little bit past 25 miles, then it's kind of like, okay, the people doing the longer race are kind of separated from the other people.
So those are your big rides. What's your involvement at Outpost?
Back in 2016. So Braden, my partner in Outpost, I guess everybody has common knowledge. He used to work at Carytown. Mm-hmm. He left Carytown. He kind of did his own thing for a while. Then he and another friend of mine, Ethan, approached me that Braden was looking to open another bike shop.
Okay.
And so I said I was, so they looked for a partner, investment.
Okay.
So I said I was interested. And I was actually kind of flattered. I didn't really know, Braden was I would consider him, he was my mechanic. He was the guy I would go to, but I didn't really have a outside of that relationship with Braden. And the other guy, Ethan, again, I mean, we were friends, but I wasn't, we weren't close friends. Right?
Sure.
So, I mean, I was kind of flattered, I guess.
Yeah.
They were, approached me, and I said I was interested, and I think at the time Braden didn't have a location, so we were, and so I've been retired from like corporate life for a little bit at that time, but my sort of side gig is commercial real estate. So I was looking around, and I found the spot where Outpost is now, and actually it was being sold by somebody I had done business with before.
Okay.
So anyway, I talked to Braden about the spot, and he liked the spot, and it was bigger than what he needed for just a bike shop.
Yeah.
So then he had this idea of doing Outpost and having groceries. And anyway, so I managed to procure the spot. We opened up. We had groceries for a while, and then obviously once we had groceries for enough time, we managed to get our ABC license, and then we sell beer and wine.
Okay.
So it's been a pretty symbiotic. The beer people come in for either bike stuff or there's bike customers that only buy bike stuff. There's grocery beer customers that only do those, but there's a good amount that do that are interested in both, and it kind of keeps the atmosphere, keeps people coming in and going, and I think it's we've had some, of course in retail turnover in the employees, but it seems like we've always had a good staff that have a good atmosphere there. So I'm happy to be involved with that.
Okay.
And I've my only involvement anymore. I buy the wine, so, which involves the tough task of meeting with vendors and tasting wine and deciding what to stock and what not to stock.
Okay. Of the foods there at Outpost, do you have something like you like particularly at the store? Something that stands out. Let's go with that. Something there, food thing that happens to stand out there at Outpost.
Well, we have Chewy's Bagels now. We were one of the places that got like Nate's Bagels started because he used to do pop-ups, and we were one of those. So we've been kind of like and then he moved and has this
He's a location now. Yeah.
So there's been a number of those. The guy Ames from Ames Hot Honey. There's a lot of these small people. Literally they come and knock on the door and like, hey, can we sell
stuff
whatever?
out of here?
So those are the more fun things, and those are like they seem to be. They change, over time. The Capital Chips was another one of those, and we were like one of the first with Nightingale ice cream.
That's the one.
And Nightingale is still like we sell a lot, and we have a good relationship with the owner of that, and he's just blown up. It's unbelievable how big he's become. But we were literally one of the first.
Yeah, first vendors there. Yeah. I thought I'd ask about this stuff.
And then we it's like we do a lot of the chips and salsa. We do a lot of coffee. We have pretty much all the local, Blanchards and Lamplighters called something else now, and the place where the Appalachian Journey is, Floyd. There's a coffee roaster out of Floyd. I should know all these, but
it's okay. It's all right. I won't hold them to you. It's okay. But yeah, I thought I'd ask about like if there was something there that stood out to you, because you don't have to remember all of them. What do you take with you on the ride? Say we'll differentiate. You're doing the morning roll call ride, right? 30, 40 miles. Like, what do you take with you on your ride?
I usually take a bar or two water bottles, and spares.
Okay.
Two CO2 and a pump.
Now if
I'm
you're doing
pretty minimalistic.
Okay. Now if you're doing one of these 200-mile rides, like is
Well,
it
then,
still just
it's a
more
little
of the same?
more, but it's not like, I haven't been, since June I haven't been doing but as much, but getting up and deciding I'm going to ride to Jamestown and back, it's like, at a certain point, it's like, it's not a big deal. Like, you just like, okay, I'm going to throw 4 fig bars in my pocket and a couple more things. And that's, like, it doesn't need to be that much more, because you can stop at Halps or wherever.
Plenty of rest.
Like, if you know the route, it's definitely easier because you know where you can resupply. But the only difference in longer rides generally of that type is is food,
Mm-hmm.
and drink.
Yeah.
So like and with the brevets, they typically have control points, and the control points are like
They're
a
also
Wawa
okay.
or a McDonald's, or so like okay, and so that's always the thing when you leave a Wawa, like this is a control point. The next control point's in 30 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I need to have 30 miles worth of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's always like you don't really have to think about like, oh, I need 200K worth of food. I need enough to get to this
the next
spot.
rest stop. Yeah.
And I mean, on the longer rides, like I typically try to bring like a sandwich
Mm-hmm.
or two, like
Okay.
to have some real food. So it's like the longer you can go eating real food, like I almost never eat. I only eat gels
Mm-hmm.
like in races. Like I never eat gels. Like
That's a
riding.
regular ride,
Like
okay.
I'll like fig bars.
Mm-hmm.
I'll eat, but it's
Okay.
like trying to like the longer the ride, the more you want to try to eat like real food, especially
Okay.
at the beginning when you still can. So you know Thorpe, right?
Thorpe, yes. Mm-hmm.
So he just did gravel worlds and ate like 52 gels, and then he was
Mhm.
like, "Oh, I can't eat," and I didn't have enough water. And it's like, I mean, I actually had a conversation with him the morning
Yeah.
of his, and I said, "You need some real food.
Yeah.
You can't do a 17-hour race on gels. I mean, there are probably people that
They
can,
yeah.
but
yeah.
you have to train yourself to do that.
Yeah. Doesn't he like Pop-Tarts or something?
That was his thing. Now, but anyway, he was for that particular thing. He had like
Two
52
gel.
gels. Yeah.
That does seem like your body would not be happy about that eventually.
No, and I
Yeah.
mean that's with the long, like more of the brevets, but even it's like even some of the longer races, you get to a point where you're like you really don't want to eat, and you don't want to drink, but you know you have to.
Yeah.
So it's very perfunctory, and it's very easy to like lose track and like go too long without eating and or
Mhm.
drinking.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Ooh, what's something for someone who might be interested in some of these colossal rides? Like, what's something you'd want to tell someone about? Like, I'm thinking of doing a 200-mile ride. Like, what's something you'd want to tell someone about that?
Well, it's make sure you have a good route. I mean, it's all like that's the first thing. So
Okay.
like in these organized rides, I mean, even like an Outpost ride,
Mm-hmm.
there's like Outpost. I mean, we're in the middle of a series of 200Ks.
Yep.
But I mean, there's like designated store stops. So again, like okay, you need to have food to get you from A to B, from B to C. And when you're at B, they're all convenience stores. You can get what you need,
Yeah.
water or Coke or Gatorade, and whatever your food of choice is to get you to the next stop. So it's it's like if you have routes that people have kind of vetted from
Yeah.
from a like minimal traffic, places to stop, and knowing where you are, so you don't get lost.
Yeah.
Because if it's your first 100-mile ride and you get lost and you're like
That would suck.
100 miles and you're still 20 miles from home and you hadn't really planned on that. Like even if you have enough food, if you're like, I mean, there's this sort of mental thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have a route on your Garmin, like it tells you how far you have left.
Yep.
And even if you take a detour, that it'll still tell you how far you have left
Mhm.
to get there. So it's like, but if you don't have a route and you're just kind of winging it, and then you
Yeah.
end up, it's fine if you make a conscious decision to do more, but like you don't want to unexpectedly realize, I'm dead tired and I still have 20 miles to go.
Right. Yeah.
So I think, I mean, and I just happen to, like, I'm not a good route planner, but like Braden's a good route planner, Tim's a good route planner. I mean, these brevets by definition,
Mhm.
they have, vetted routes.
Yeah.
I ride with, like in the mountains, most of the rides I've done there have been with Grant, and he
Mhm.
has all these rides.
Yeah.
I mean, I rode with Grant the weekend before last, and it's like an 80-miler, and there actually were no store stops. I mean,
Yeah.
there was water.
Mhm.
So, but you, like, okay, going in, okay, I need food for 6.5 hours,
Mhm.
right? So I need, like, I have 2 sandwiches, 4 fig bars, and some other stuff. You figure out what you need,
Right,
and then
for that
there's
distance.
places to get water
Yeah.
with a filter.
I think about the 200-mile, the double. It's the double century on the Cap Trail that you did, and having to pass by your car. I don't think I would have been able to like I don't think I would have been able to see my car and then not like, I think I'm done. Like it's just.
Well, I mean, I used to run a little bit, and it was
Yeah.
like whenever I had to do like a 10-mile run and like 8 miles in, like you don't want to go like you close. You don't I always wanted to not get too close to the house.
Yeah.
Because it just makes it like it's just too tempting. So
Mm-hmm.
you just like you do a loop, like when we did the 200K on
Mm-hmm.
Saturday night to Jamestown. There was a ranger there, so we couldn't do the loop of Jamestown
Oh, okay,
Island.
okay.
So it's like, okay, well, we need to do whatever it is, 6 miles. So we actually just did like 3 miles up the Colonial Parkway and back.
Okay, okay.
But it's like if we would have said, oh yeah, we'll get back to Richmond and do 6 miles around Fountain Lake, it's like, yeah, nobody would have done it. You know, you do it like everybody's still like, I mean, they're not fresh, but you're not exhausted at that point. So it's like, okay.
Right, I
You
can
know,
add a few
But
miles.
it's
here.
like, but if you wait till the end, and like, oh yeah, well, let's just do an out and back out River Road, or I mean, Riverside Drive. Everybody's gonna like,
Right, I'm done, guys. Yeah. What time did y'all get back from that?
Just before 2.
2 in the morning.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So then I rode back home. So I got home a little after 2. I had a sandwich and a beer and a shower.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like you kind of wired, so it's like I went to bed about 3.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Yeah, it's not hateful. I wasn't like sometimes I mean I've done that before and I felt super sleepy.
Yeah.
I mean that's the other thing with those brevets. Is, I mean, it's like the sleep thing is definitely
It's
a
real.
thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm an 8-hour a night kind of guy generally. So it's
Okay.
like if I'm getting 4 or 5, it's
not great.
It's not great.
Okay.
I mean, and generally during the day you're fine, but then it's like at 2 in the morning or so. I mean, your body is like, okay, it's dark. You don't have the whatever melatonin or whatever it is. It's like it can be tough.
Yeah. What's something now that you've done all these rides and more rides to come, right? What's something you would have wanted to tell yourself when you were getting at Bianchi to do those duathlons? Like, if you could go back, show up at the bike shop, like, what's something you would have wanted to tell yourself back then?
I think it's all about having like a plan and like a training plan. I mean, and you don't even have to be. I mean, you can be very fastidious if you want to be, but just like even having a plan. Like I didn't even have a plan. Like so, it's like in being consistent. I mean, endurance sports in general, and then the longer the event is, the more I think it's a matter of like it's like building a wall, right? You just got to put all the bricks in, but you can't put the top layer in until all the other layers are there, right?
Okay,
So it's like there's rule of thumb like for Paris Brest Paris, which is always in August. It's like to do it well, like you should have 5,000 miles in by
By the time
then,
it starts,
right?
yeah.
I mean that's just like a blue sky rule of thumb. I mean it's different but if you start thinking about it, okay, well I've got 7 months to get 5,000 miles. That's okay, so that's like 800 miles a month. If you get to February and you haven't been riding, it's like all of a sudden it's like, oh, I've got 3 months and
to compress
5,000 miles. And it's like, I'm not gonna be as prepared as I probably should be. Can I still get it done? Maybe, but and again, like the more with things like that, the more prepared you are, the more fun the event is, because you're like you can go like you're going at less of your maximum.
Okay.
Right. I mean, if you're doing a race, the race isn't going to get easier because you're still going to try to do the race as hard as you can.
Yeah.
Like that. I mean, that's my mentality. But you hopefully can perform better.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that has its own reward, I guess.
So you would try to get to plan a little bit better, to do a little bit. Training.
Yeah, more structure. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, and so the first thing is just like, okay, like doing a 200-mile week and then not riding for a week and then a 50-mile week and then another 200-mile week.
Yeah.
That doesn't really cut it.
Yeah.
Like if you were just doing 150 every week and then making sure you get like one long ride and maybe one interval session every week.
Yeah.
I mean, and some people don't want to do that, and that's totally fine. But I mean, if you want to maximize your performance, that's the sort of thing.
Yeah.
And if you enjoy doing it, I mean, that's like, I enjoy the riding. I mean, I don't always you know, like Saturday at a certain point when you're in the rain and it's like you're feeling tired and you're like, why am I out here? It's like, well, I'm out here because I wanted to be out here.
Yeah. So you still enjoy it?
I still enjoy it, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, everybody enjoys it when they're done. You know, it's like,
right, yeah.
you know, I mean, but there's never been like, and I'm like, okay, so right now I'm on the fence about like cyclocross for this year. I haven't done it in a couple of years.
Okay.
Like, oh my God. But like, I've never done a cyclocross race where everybody has this, oh, that was so hard. It's like, it's always hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, there's no like sitting in. It's like, you're going hard.
The whole time.
If you're doing it right.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, is that, I don't know. So that's like, you have to make up your mind if that's what you want to do or not.
Okay. And then make a plan. Yeah. Make a plan.
I mean, do you have a plan? Do you have any structure?
No. I ride. For right now, I ride. I will say, if I know I'm going to do a big event that's outside of what I'm already doing, then I will start doing things to prepare for. Like, if I know the only big event I think of is like Stormy at Thunder Ridge. Okay. Right. If I know that's coming up, then I'll start doing some more climbing of some kind. You know, to kind of build up to that. But otherwise, I just kind of ride and let the ride happen.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think that's the bulk of people that ride. Now,
if I was gonna do something like these big monster rides, that would be different. I think I would certainly add some more structure into it, kind of thing.
I mean, do you like even have like weekly mileage goals?
I used to have mileage goals, and now I don't. I actually ride more often, but I don't ride as long. I used to do bigger rides on the weekends, and now I'll do a big ride on the weekend, but I won't do one Saturday and Sunday as often. Now it's more of, I enjoy riding with other groups. I do a big ride every so often. But in my 2019, I did more big rides. It was 80 miles Saturday, Sunday kind of thing, which I still enjoy. I just don't do them as often. So, but eventually. Mark, I'd like to thank you for sharing your time, man, and telling your story about the big rides, the doing all the riding, Outpost. All of that. So I appreciate you finally getting this together, because this is what, the third time?
Yeah.
Rescheduling this?
Yeah.
So yeah, I appreciate that, man. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome.